Alright, let's dive into this because it's a situation that's got a lot of 49ers fans on edge, and for good reason. The injury report is out, and it's not pretty. 20 players sidelined? That's over 20% of the roster. Personally, I think this is where the narrative starts to get really interesting. On paper, it looks like a disaster. But here's the thing. The 49ers aren't hitting the panic button just yet. Assistant head coach Chris Forster is out here saying they're very healthy. Now, I get it. He's got to keep morale up. But it's also a reminder that injuries are part of the game. What many people don't realize is that this kind of situation can actually reveal a lot about a team's depth. If you take a step back and think about it, this could be a blessing in disguise for some of those reserve players. They're getting reps they might not have otherwise, and that's huge for development. But let's not sugarcoat it. The names on the injury list are concerning. Kyle Juszczyk, Jacob Cowing, Carver Willis. These aren't just bench warmers. And then, there's the soreness for guys like Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw. In my opinion, that's coach speak for we're monitoring this closely. What this really suggests is that the 49ers are walking a tightrope here. They've got a joint practice with the Titans coming up, and while Forster says it's not in jeopardy, I'm not so sure. Remember 2024? They canceled joint practices with the Saints when they were down 23 players. So the question is, how close are they to that breaking point? What makes this really interesting is the timing. Preseason is just around the corner, and these injuries are happening at positions where depth is already a concern. Take the offensive line, for example. Carver Willis gets a concussion, Brett Toss sits out. Suddenly, you're shuffling starters. From my perspective, this is where coaching staff earns their paycheck. They've got to adapt on the fly, and it's not just about who's playing, but how they're being used. Robert Jones stepping in at left guard? That's a move worth watching. It's not just about filling a spot, it's about how he fits into the scheme. Now, let's talk about the bright spots because, honestly, there are a few. Brock Purdy? Sharp as ever. Even with his top targets out, he's connecting. That deep ball to Jordan Watkins? That's the kind of play that keeps defenses honest. And speaking of Watkins, he's becoming a go-to guy in practice. Sure, he dropped a couple, but the fact that quarterbacks are targeting him consistently, that's a vote of confidence. What this really suggests is that the 49ers might have more depth at receiver than people think. But here's the bigger question. Does this injury situation impact their Super Bowl window? Personally, I think it's too early to say. Injuries are part of the NFL, and every team deals with them. What matters is how the 49ers respond. Are they going to let this derail their season, or will they use it as a chance to build resilience? If you take a step back and think about it, this could be the kind of adversity that makes them stronger, or it could expose weaknesses they can't afford to have. One thing that immediately stands out is how they're handling their veterans. Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey are being limited to 20 snaps per practice. Smart move, in my opinion. You don't want to burn out your stars in July when you're aiming for January. But it also raises a deeper question. How much can they rely on these guys if the injuries keep piling up? It's a fine line between resting them and needing them to step up. Lastly, let's not overlook the defensive side. Alfred Collins and Grayson Halton are back in practice, and that's a big deal. Halton blowing past Nick Zakelj in drills? That's the kind of energy you want to see from a rookie. What many people don't realize is that the defensive line could be the X factor this season. If they stay healthy, and that's a big if, they could carry this team through some of these offensive struggles. So where does this leave us? The 49ers are in a tricky spot, no doubt. But here's my takeaway. This isn't a crisis yet. It's a test. How they handle these injuries, how they adapt, and how their depth steps up will define their season. In my opinion, This is the kind of story that makes the NFL fascinating. It's not just about who's on the field, it's about who's ready to step up when they're not. And that, my friends, is what we'll be watching closely as this season unfolds.